Well, hello there, friends. So today what we're working on is a bench seat here. So this is actually a rear bench seat for a project that I'm working on where you saw a couple videos ago where I did the bucket seats. I'm going to be matching up this back seat here to that bucket seats. So I'm going to be using some of the same methods and everything, but we're going to be doing a bench seat version for you. So here we go. So what is the first thing that we always do? We take our Sharpie, our peel off China marker white. Take this here and we always mark all of our intersections, right? Every time, nothing changes. So wherever we see an intersection, that's where we're going to mark it. So I'm marking this here for the purpose of our seat inserts, because I'm going to be doing something a little bit different with seat inserts here. So for those of you that don't know, this is Lucille, the box cutter. You can see that serrated edge that I took a grinder to that edge there. Okay, that's going to help us get rid of these threads. So you know what my technique number 9843 is? My technique is taking everything apart on the seat while it's still on the seat. Because if you've already taken the cover off of the seat and then you're trying to take all this stuff apart, it's about twice as hard to do. Because here the seat is actually helping you hold everything while you're taking it apart. It's your third hand. So if you were trying to take this apart when the cover is already off of the seat, yeah, you wish you had that third hand. So I realize some people might not know what I'm doing here. What I'm doing is I'm removing the hog rings with some dikes. So these are the old hog rings. What I usually do is some guys, they'll just cut them, but when they cut them, I'll show you like that. When you cut them, sometimes you have little pieces flying all over the place. So I almost never cut them. What I do is I twist. Usually if I twist clockwise, they come off pretty easy. Oh, look, somebody got tired. A little tired there. Oh, who's that? That Mr. Poodles? So now would be a great time to hit the like button, right? Poodles, Mr. Poodles. So please like, like, like. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I've had some commenters talk about the seam allowance. So this is the stock original seam allowance, which is about 3/8 of an inch. But you can see here where I cut the pattern, so there's no seam allowance there. So this is what I do. This is technique number 6,825. So what I do is I actually add in that seam allowance in there. So I'm going to add that in where it's missing. And here on this side, I have the original, so I could just follow that. Just like that. So then when I make my new pattern, I have, on this particular one, I'm just going to sew right there, right on that edge. And that'll give me my new missing seam allowance. You see it right there? So this is the cut. This is the seam allowance. You see that? So that's what I'm talking about. So we just made this pattern, so I'm going to put a big X on it. That way I don't make a duplicate. I've done that before. So do you remember when I first started cutting out patterns, I said to cut out the large pieces first? Well, this is what I meant. I guess that was in the other video. But anyway, this is what I ended up with. And that's all I got. That's the end of what I ordered for the job. So that's what I'm talking about there. If I would have done all the small pieces first and the large pieces last, maybe I wouldn't have had enough. Okay, now we're going to make our seat inserts here. So the first thing we're going to do is take a square, something similar to this. Make sure that your material is squared up. Because if you don't, if you're going to freehand it, your pleats could be crooked, okay? You'll end up drawing them crooked. Somehow something will be crooked. So anyway, don't do that. So just go ahead and make sure it's square like that. And what we're doing to match the front seats is we did 3.5-inch pleats. So what I am going to do now is I'm going to leave about an inch here. So we will start measuring from that inch out. So 3.5, that's our first pleat. 3.5, second pleat. Okay, so I guess we could do that, right? We can do 3.5, 7, 10.5. Keep going. 3.5, 7, 10.5. So we need to do about that much. Okay, so this insert here is about 21.25. I'm going to allow more, so I'm going to just say 22. So I'll put it right here, 22, mark 22. Come over here, mark 22. So that's the width of the panel. So here, I'm going to start here again on the top. So 1 and then 3.25. So start here with a 1, and that's where we're going to start. So 3.5, 7, 10.5, right? 3.5, 7, 10.5. Just keep going. Yeah, 10.5, 3.5. Okay, so now we gotta also do the same thing for our backrest seat insert. So this is what I do here. So I'll lay that up on top of that where it belongs. And I guess I will mark that as I'll call it 14.5. Right there. And another 14.5 right there. That's where we're gonna end it. Right there. Okay, so look at that. We have a bottom seat insert and a backrest seat insert, but you know what? We still have to do pleats for this one. So this is what I do. We'll do the same. We'll start here. 1, 3.5, 7, 10.5, 3.5, 7, 10.5. A lot of repetition, right? 3.5, 7, 10.5. Now, this is technique number 78. So what we do is we take the combination of both the back and the bottom, and we draw the line through both. You see that? So by doing this, we know that our pleats are always going to line up with the backrest and the bottom cushion. We're not doing them individually. So this is actually going to be, oh, that one there moved on me. It's going to be a lot more accurate when it comes time to put the covers on and having your pleats line up. Because people will notice if your pleats are not lined up, and they're going to know who did it. So you don't want your name attached to that kind of quality anywhere at any time. Okay, so now this is the bottom cushion, this is the backrest. So I know that they're going to line up. This is what I do. I put this squiggly line right here. This tells me that this is where they're going to meet together like this. You got the bottom cushion, you got your backrest. The squiggly line here is going to be where it meets. So this is the bottom of the backrest. This is the back of the backrest. Ta-da! So now there's a couple different ways of sewing this up. And I'm going to show you that too. Look at that. This is my only waste right here. Did it again. So we had enough material. Okay, so a couple different ways of doing this. Either after I foam this up, which is what you're going to see in a second, when I set up my sewing machine, when you go to roll it up like this to sew your pleats, you can do both at the same time like this if you want to. And then put this through the sewing machine just like that one. There's one pleat, sew that one there, and you can go on and so on and so forth. Or you can go ahead, because you have this mark here, just go ahead and cut that up, and then you have smaller pieces to sew. So you can feed it through your machine easier. But if you don't mind the challenge, I think the best way to do it is this way. Roll it up like this, sew them up. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff foamed up now. Now for the side and back pieces, I'm going to be using 1/4" scrim. That's this stuff here with this kind of backing. Bulletproof, I call it. 1/4" right there. So I'm going to go ahead and get these glued up and cut out. Now it's time to sew these up. So we're going to sew them up and cut them out. So as you can see, I'm sewing right on my line. Oh, here's a good trick right here. This is technique number 85. Technique number 85 is when you do a corner like this, you sink the needle down into the corner, you can lift your foot, and look at that. Ain't that cool? Okay. Now, cut this out. So what you want to do is you want to cut right next to that thread right there without actually cutting it. I know some of you have heard this before, but there's some viewers out there that are watching this for the first time. So if you've seen this before, you know. So you're becoming an expert and a professional. Or if you already knew that, you are a professional. Okay, let's move on to sewing up these serial inserts. So I'm going to go ahead and sew up these pleats. So I'm going to just sew right on my white line right there. And people ask me, they say, do you sit directly behind the sewing machine? Or do you sit, I told them, well, I sit off to the side so that way I could feed the material through. So really what I can do is I lean over and I look at the needle right on that line. And then I just go for it. So remember our squiggly line up the middle there? That's what I'm talking about. See, look at the pleats. Right? Look at the pleats. This is what we want when the backrest and the bottom cushion come together. So remember we have our 3.5" pleats. So what I'm going to do here on the end is we got our 3.5" pleat right there, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add about another 3/8 of an inch right here for seam allowance. So let's just call it almost 4 inches. So right here, almost 4 inches. So that's where my line is going to be right there. I'm going to sew that one. Do the same here. Already got that one marked. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and mark out this pattern. So, right there, right there. I can see I have this almost 21 inches. I'll just mark the same here. Okay, draw that line. Oh, my squiggly disappeared. I'm going to put it back. Now I'll just do the same to the backrest insert. Now it's going to be time to put pieces together. So, you know, this is the insert and then this is the side panel. So do you remember in the other video, technique number 423, I'm going to show you that because remember I said that if you cover it up this way, you can't see the pleat. So you don't know how wide it's going to be. So what I do is I take this and I measure 3.5 right there. 3.5 right there. Draw my line. That's 3.5 inches, just like all these other pleats here. So now when I go to sew it up, I have to do it the right way. I'll be sewing from the top here this time. So I'm going to be sewing from the top right on that black line there, and that's going to give me my perfect 3.5 inches. Look at that right there. That's a 3.5 inch pleat. So look at that. That's a 3.5 inch pleat, just like all the rest of them. Pretty nifty, huh? You can use that one. So this is the backrest inserts. So this is what we just put together here. That's the lower portion. The upper portion is going to be this one right here. So that way it matches the front seats. If I did the pleats here on this upper portion, it would duplicate what it was original, but it wouldn't match the front seats. So that's what I told the customer I would do for him. So next thing I got to do, before we put these two pieces together, I need to find center. So I'm just going to fold it in half, which is technique number 32. It's a low number because it's so important. Is what I do is I just fold it in half like that, and I mark my center. Don't get any permanent marker though on the vinyl though. You're going to hate yourself. Okay. So I got that marked. We'll do the same here. Fold it in half. Mark our center, which happens to be right there on that pleat. There we go. Now, on the front side, go ahead and mark that. That way I know where that is. Same thing with here. That's the back side mark. I'll mark it here on the front. Just like that. Now we're going to put these pieces together. Okay, so starting from the center right here where we have our marks, we're going to line them up. That's where we're going to start sewing, is from the center, and work our way out this way, and then flip it over, and then do the other side. So on the backrest here, this seam right here where those two parts went together just now, it takes a listing. So I take my roll of listing here. We're going to put that on there because it's going to take a listing wire later on when I go to do the install. The listing wire goes inside the listing. Now I'll be putting this bottom skirt right here on the bottom of that insert, which is this part right here. So we're going to do the same thing. I have the center mark right here. Going to match that up to the center right there. We'll sew it this way, flip it over, and then sew it this way. Next is the top right here, the top of the backrest, and the sides. So I'm going to come over here. You can see here where I have the top and the sides right here. Let's go ahead and put that together. So being that I'm not going to be putting a welt back on here, or some people call it beading and some people call it piping, they let me know in the comments. But anyway, I'm going to do a top stitch right here. Instead, give it an updated look and a little bit more modern. So now I'm just going to put the back on. This is the back. I'm going to do the same thing, just like before. Match up our marks right here. And then we're going to go ahead and sew it up. So this is the listing wire I was talking about. So the listing wire goes into the listing here that I made for this. Go ahead and feed that in. There. Now that gives us something for the hog rings to hold on to, is that wire right there. So now the bottom cushion is going to go together pretty much the exact same way as we just did that backrest. So being that you just saw me do that, I'm not going to bore you guys, so I'm just going to tear right through this one, okay? So I did a quick little freshen them up on the frame here. And I'm going to give it something that it never had before. Before, on the between the springs, there was nothing. So it's foamed directly to the spring. So what I'm doing is I'm isolating the foam in the springs right here by putting a layer of burlap on. So now we're going to put a bottom seat cover on. So now for technique number 152, what I do is I match this seam right here to, you can see right here the indentation in the foam where it was before. I put my hand flat like this, right on top, underneath right here. Okay, I put my hand flat, hold it down, and roll it over. Just like that. Instead of slipping it over like you would a sock, you know, instead of sliding it over like that, I hold this part and I pull this down. And that's how you get a real nice corner. So what I'm doing here is I'm measuring the distance between these two frame ends right here. And what I am seeing is about 46 and a half, so 23 and a quarter would be center. I'm going to mark that right there. Oh, that doesn't look right. See, 23. Oh, yeah, I did it wrong. See, I'm not perfect. That's really it right there. 23 and a quarter, as mentioned. I put down 22, not 23. So we're going to not use this one. So this is center on the frame. So I marked center on the cover, but you can see they're not lining up. Well, they're pretty darn close, aren't they? So all I have to do is just kind of move this one over to the right a little bit, so that way they match up like that. Now I'm just going to go ahead and start. So the reason I did that is because on the other side here is our pleats. So we want our middle pleat here to match up perfectly with the backrest. So that's why we check our middle here, our center. So let's put on some hog rings. So I have had people in comments ask me, what are those little clips that you're using? Well, these are called hog rings. And they say, well, what are you putting them on with? And I tell them, well, this, you put hog rings on with hog ring pliers. That's what they look like right there. So what you do is you put the hog ring in the hog ring plier like that. And that's how it sits in there. And then you just squeeze it together and it will put something together for you. So I also have a video about how you can make a quick $10 from all your friends and family with hog rings. So when it comes time to do this part here, usually what I do is I make sure that I'm pulling really tight. So pull this to the rear, which will tighten up this front corner here. Some guys, they'll start here and then they'll work around this way. But what I do is I kind of do the opposite. I grab this and I pull this as tight as I can. Okay, now we'll do the same to the other side. Now that I have the burlap over the springs, that actually makes this better than factory, doesn't it? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Okay, now let's put the backrest cover on. So what I do is I turn the top of it inside out, like a little bucket. So that way I could slip the top over the backrest first, like that, and like that. What I did here is I double checked my measurement and make sure I got center right there. I marked it here, I marked it here. That's what we're going to match up. We're going to match up those two lines right there. Now we're going to put our hog rings there. Now let's see about slipping the rest of the cover on. So some of you have asked, what do I clean off this white China marker with? I use mineral spirits. And that there, you can see the white marks right there. This is what it looks like after I've cleaned them off. So that's what I use right there. And there we go. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Well, my friends, until next time, we'll see ya.